Most of you, if I asked you to explain something to me that you learnt last week, not even a month ago, but last week, most of you couldn't do it. Not because you're not smart enough, but because your brain has a natural built-in delete button. Every piece of information that you learn has a natural expiry date. Unless you understand your brain's chemistry and how to work with it, you will keep deleting these things. But almost 140 years ago, a German psychologist learnt why our brain deletes information, at what periods, and how to counteract it. The science still holds up today, yet almost nobody uses it. In 1885, a German psychologist called Hermann Ebbinghaus ran one of the most important experiments in the history of learning. He memorized lists of nonsense syllables, meaningless combinations of letters, and then tested himself at intervals to see how quickly he forgot them. What he found was brutal. Within 1 hour, he'd lost 40% of what he'd just learned. After 24 hours, over half was gone, and after a week, he could barely recall 25%. He plotted this on a graph, and that graph became known as the forgetting curve. A steep, exponential drop showing just how fast new information falls out of your memory when you don't do anything to hold on to it. But here's where it gets interesting. Ebbinghaus discovered that if he periodically retested himself, not just reread the material, but tried to pull the information back out of his memory, that curve flattened. The forgetting curve slowed down, and if he timed those tests at specific intervals, so shortly after learning, then a day later, then a few days, then a week, the information stuck for dramatically longer, with far less total study time than if he just sat there cramming. That principle over a century later still remains one of the most powerful learning techniques that is the most underused, and it will help with dramatically reducing the amount of time required to get the same, if not an even better result. So what does this actually look like in practice? Well, in a moment, I'm going to show you a system and a schedule for how to take any topic that you're trying to learn and implement it to become bulletproof when you come to exams. But first, let's understand exactly what is happening in your brain with this forgetting curve, because once we understand it, that's how we know how to fix it. Because forgetting isn't your brain being broken, it has so many inputs throughout the day, it needs to prune and decide which things it needs to hold on to. Because every time you retrieve something from your brain, it goes, oh okay, this is important, we need to remember this, and makes the connection stronger. So one of the key distinctions you need to remember is the difference between retrieval and recognition, otherwise put as understanding and recognition, right? Because a lot of people, as an example, could tell you they recognize electricity, they know what it is, they're familiar with it, but they probably couldn't explain the intricacies of how it actually works. Don't fall into that trap of just because you recognize your notes, you're rereading them, that means that you somehow understand it. Retrieval is testing yourself, getting yourself to explain it. Something called the Feynman Technique is fantastic for this, where the principle is very simply, you have to explain a subject as very simply as if you're explaining it to a 10-year-old. If you can't explain it in the most simple terms, you probably don't understand it well enough to the level that you should to do well in it in an exam for A-levels or GCSEs, for example. But that's why the timing that I'm about to show you in this schedule matters so much. You want to retrieve that memory just as it's about to fade. If you do it too soon, then it's not really a challenge and it's not strengthening the memory. However, if you do it too late, then it's already gone out of the memory and you almost have to relearn it from scratch. That's why getting the sweet spot is just right. So let me show you on screen with a super simple example. So let's start by just taking one A-level biology module, right? And what we want to do is break it down into subtopics and really pick a subject that basically would take you about 45 minutes, an hour to study. And this is how we'll do it for just one module of your A-levels. So starting with biology, we've chosen biological molecules and we've broken it down into the 8 subtopics that it has, right? So let's say on day 1, we're starting on Tuesday, we would do that 1 hour of learning. Now remember that the spaced repetition intervals are 15 minutes, 1 hour, 1 day, 3 days, 7 days, and then 14 days, right? So there's 6 intervals, right? So we have to think about, right, well, we're doing a big block for the very first time we're learning it, then a smaller block to recall it, an even smaller one to recall it again, and then it's just kind of keep testing ourselves. So let's take topic 1 that we're going to do on Tuesday, as it shows here, and we're going to spend an hour doing that learning. But at the end of that hour, we're going to test ourselves for 15 minutes. So one of the best ways is that Feynman technique I said, where you basically just try and explain it back to yourself out loud. Maybe don't do it in a public place, they might think you've gone a bit loopy, but is to kind of show that you understand it by explaining it back without kind of just rereading and glossing over. That's the best way to show that you fully understand it. So you'll do your 45 minutes, hour, you do a 15-minute recap, then you can maybe go and make a cup of tea, or you can come back in a bit and then do your 1 hour review thereafter. Obviously that lends itself quite nicely to doing another subject in that hour. So if you wanted to stack these, you can start doing that. But let's talk about that in a moment. So we've done our topic 1 on Tuesday. So then the next day we'll spend around 20 minutes just retrieving all that information. So you might want to explain it to yourself again. You might want to, when you finish studying, ask yourself some questions that you then come back to and try and answer the next day. Then we want to come back and revisit it now. So if we first learnt it on the Tuesday, we do our 1 day review on the Wednesday, then we'll do our 3-day review on the Friday, our 7-day review on the following Tuesday, and then our 14-day review the Tuesday after that. Now, that all looks very good, but now let's think about how we're starting to slot all the other modules in. So then obviously we could do 2 subjects in a day if we wanted, and we want to schedule our timing all around that. So I'm going to show you now how it works when you start slotting in other modules and other subjects. So on top of that, we've started to add chemistry, and we've done the module of atomic structures and bonding. Then if we wanted to do our maths on top of that, we start adding that in as well. And really what we can do is, depending on how much time we've got, we can start stacking these blocks together to create a schedule that's really efficient, that's making sure that we need to spend less time studying because we are so efficient and recalling what we need to do. And that's the name of the game when it comes to GCSEs and A-levels. All you need to do is understand the information and be able to regurgitate it back, to answer questions on it, and to just show that you understand the material. So what I've done is that in the description, I've put a prompt for what you can put into AI to then create you a schedule like this. And then at the end, instead of breaking it down section by section, you can just add these all onto one simple schedule that helps you understand exactly what you need to do on what day to be as efficient as possible, but most importantly, completely maximize that recall to remember everything without anything leaving your brain. So 3 common mistakes to avoid. The first thing is, remember, it's about recalling, not rereading. The brain almost needs to go through a little bit of a struggle to retrieve it so that it knows that it's important. That's why you have to either ask yourself questions to test yourself later, or you need to try and re-explain it from scratch, like I say, using that Feynman technique as if you're explaining it to someone. The second is skipping the early reviews. They feel the most pointless, but they are probably the most important, especially the 15-minute one, the 1 hour one, and the 1 day one. Those are the times where it's really easy to forget it, and also really easy to skip it. If you think like you have a little bit more leeway as the gaps between those retrieval periods goes on, because obviously the last one between the 7-day and the 14-day is quite a long gap. So you have a little bit more leeway. However, at the start, you have a much more easier route to forgetting. So those ones are the really important ones to start concretizing. And the third mistake is people get really excited about this and want to cram 10 topics into 1 day and then don't do anything for a week. Well, if you're doing that, you're not really following this whole forgetting curve, and you're not doing it properly, so it's not going to work. This is a discipline and it's a consistency thing. So if you can maintain that, you can make the whole thing way more calm and stress-free, because you are doing it slow and steady, and like I say, playing into your brain's natural ability to recall. So if you do it well, it will make things so much more effortless. So yes, your brain does have a delete button, but now you know when it presses it and how to avoid it. Remember, this is useful not just for school exams, for GCSEs and A-levels, yes, but it will be great for university, medical school, studying way beyond all of that sort of stuff. So a really useful skill to have, and again, one that will save you hours, days, weeks over a lifetime if you really nail this. Remember, you have the prompt in the description, and if you're applying to medical or dental school, FutureDoc, 93% of our students get 1 offer at least to get into their chosen university. So if you would like our help, you can find out exactly how you can do that here. Otherwise, do subscribe and turn on notifications for any study-related material or stuff about applying to medical or dental school. Otherwise, best of luck with the exams. I hope you found that useful. If you've got any questions, put them in the comments below and I'll happily answer. But best of luck with the exams, and I'll see you in the next video.